My parents kicked my kids out of their home to make room for my niece, and they didn't even look me in the eye when they did it. One day we were family, the next my children were sleeping on a friend's couch. You'd think a mother would stand by her daughter, but not mine. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that they still loved us, but every small excuse, every sidelong glance told a different story. Then I found something, a letter not meant for me, and everything shattered. I didn't just lose my home. I lost the illusion of love. And that's when I decided I'd never be silent again. After the divorce, I had nowhere to go. My ex had taken the house, the savings, and every ounce of stability I once had. My parents offered us a room, the one I grew up in, saying it was only until you get back on your feet. I thought it was a lifeline. I thought maybe, despite everything, home could still be home. At first, it felt like salvation. My boys, Mason and Eli, took to their grandparents like bees to honey. My mother would tuck them in at night, telling the same bedtime stories she used to tell me. My father helped Mason with his science projects and took Eli on walks, pointing out birds and trees like they were old friends. We had dinners together, sat around the fireplace on Sundays, even returned to church as a family. I'd catch myself smiling, thinking, we're going to be okay. Then Ashley moved back from her pre-college summer program. My niece, the golden girl. She was everything my parents wanted in a granddaughter. Polished, poised, academically gifted. They spoke about her like she was royalty. Ashley will be the first in the family to go Ivy, my mother bragged at dinner. She's going to make us all proud. I nodded, smiled, clapped politely, and yet something inside me shrank every time they said her name. I didn't resent Ashley. Not really, but I noticed how my boys' drawings disappeared from the fridge to make room for Ashley's acceptance letters. How my mother only took photos of her with Ashley now. How my father's gaze lingered too long when Ashley entered the room and passed right over Eli, tugging on his sleeve. Still, I told myself, let it go, as long as the boys are happy, as long as we're safe. But something felt off. There were whispers behind closed doors, the occasional door that clicked shut when I walked by. I started second-guessing everything. Was I overreacting? Reading too much into things? One morning, I went to put away some clean towels and found a folded letter tucked between my shirts in the bottom drawer. It wasn't addressed to me, but curiosity got the better of me. It was a handwritten note from my mother to my sister, Ashley's mum. She's still here with those boys, it read. Ashley deserves this house more than any of them. I'll take care of it. My stomach dropped. I didn't confront her right away. I couldn't. I stood in that room for what felt like an hour, rereading that one sentence over and over. Ashley deserves this house more than any of them, than my sons, than me, I wanted to scream, but instead I folded the letter back and put it where I found it. Something inside me broke, but I still wasn't ready to leave. A few days later, my mother called me into the kitchen. She didn't mince words. Ashley needs a quiet space to study, she said. We've decided it's best if you and the boys move to the living room. The couch? I asked, already knowing the answer. She sighed. It's temporary. You're not being kicked out. Don't make it dramatic. You should be grateful we've let you stay this long. Grateful. I wanted to believe she meant well, but that word stuck like a thorn in my chest. I tried to protest. The boys have school, Mum. They need sleep, routine. She cut me off. Ashley has an Ivy League future ahead of her. Do you really want to get in the way of that? There it was, the unspoken truth finally spoken. I thought we mattered too. She turned her back to me. Don't be petty, Emily. You sound jealous of your own niece. That night, I moved our things into the corner of the living room. The boys asked if it was camping. I lied and said yes. They smiled and made a fort out of couch cushions. I tucked them in as best I could, blinking back tears. Then, as I turned off the lamp, Mason whispered, "Mum, why does Ashley get a bed and we don't?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I stared into the dark and felt the walls closing in. This wasn't home anymore. Maybe it never was. I tried to hold it together. For my boys, for my own sanity. But every day the cracks deepened. I watched Ashley leave for shopping trips with my mother, bags of clothes swinging from her arms like trophies. She'd return with new jeans, perfume, a designer backpack. Once, I saw my son Mason staring at her wide-eyed, holding a crumpled dollar bill he'd found between the couch cushions. "Can I get a cookie at the store, Mum?" he asked me. Before I could answer, my mother said flatly, "We don't need to spoil bad habits. Sugar makes them hyper." Later that evening, I found Mason quietly placing the dollar under his pillow. He didn't cry. He didn't ask again. That hurt more. Dinner became performance theatre. At first glance, it looked like family. Plates passed, wine poured, polite laughter, but the details betrayed us. Some nights there were only 4 full-place settings. My boys shared a fork. My chair was moved farther from the table. Once, my plate came without a napkin. I reached for one, and my mother said, "Use your sleeve, you used to, anyway." Was it a joke, a dig, a memory? I couldn't tell anymore. I told myself I was imagining things, that maybe I was just tired. But the moments piled up like dust behind furniture, ignored until you choke on them. Then came the fight. I walked into the kitchen late one night to get a glass of water and overheard my parents arguing in the next room. "She's still here," my mother hissed. "She has nowhere else to go," my father answered, his voice low and tired. "She's 37, for God's sake, with 2 kids. She's a drain, a burden, and Ashley doesn't need distractions right now. She's our daughter. She's a mistake we keep paying for." I froze, glass in hand, breath lodged in my throat. A burden, a mistake. I stood in that dark kitchen until my legs went numb, then quietly turned back to the living room and curled up on the couch beside my boys. In the morning, I smiled like nothing happened. A few days later, my father called a family meeting. I already knew what was coming. "We've decided," he said, not looking at me, "that you'll need to find another place by the end of next week." My sons were in the room. Eli held my hand, his tiny fingers gripping tight. "We understand it's hard," my mother added, "but this arrangement was never meant to be permanent. Ashley starts school soon and needs her space." "We'll be gone," I said, voice hollow. "Thank you," my mother replied, as if I'd handed her a wrapped gift. That night, Mason drew a picture of a house with no windows, a stick figure lying outside under a tree. When I asked him who it was, he shrugged. "Just someone without a bed." I cried in the bathroom, quietly, so they wouldn't hear. The next morning, my sister stopped by, her heels clicking confidently against the hardwood floors. She brought takeout for our parents and a box of Ashley's winter coats. She didn't say much to me, just a forced smile and a casual, "Hope you're doing okay, Em?" I nodded. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. not in front of the kids, not in front of the people who'd rather see me gone. Later, I saw her rummaging through my old drawers in the hallway. "Looking for Ashley's SAT notes," she said. I didn't respond. That night, I curled on the couch with the boys, covered them with a quilt I used to take to summer camp. I tried to hum the lullaby my mother once sang to me as a child, but my voice cracked halfway through. Eli blinked up at me. He didn't say anything, but something about his eyes broke me. After they fell asleep, I lay staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had come to this. I remembered my father's old promise. When I was 17 and scared about the future, he'd taken my hand and said, "This house will always be yours if you need it." Something gnawed at me. The next day, I rummaged through the storage cabinet in the garage. Among boxes of old Christmas decorations and broken lamps, I found a rusted tin box marked documents. Inside, among insurance papers and birth certificates, was a handwritten note, the title deed. My father had indeed signed the house to me years ago in case something happened to him. But someone had crossed out my name and replaced it with my mother's. It was raining when I came home. Not a soft drizzle, but that heavy, angry kind of rain that pounds your shoulders and soaks through your shoes in seconds. I was running late from my shift and praying the boys had managed to nap through the noise of Ashley's music, which seemed to echo through the entire house. But the moment I turned the corner toward the front porch, I stopped. Mason's stuffed rabbit, soaked and muddy, lay face down in the grass. Eli's toy truck was upside down in a puddle, one wheel broken off. Their books, colouring pages, even their tiny shoes, scattered across the lawn like trash. Ashley stood at the doorway, arms crossed, dry and smirking. "Your kids really need to learn how to clean up after themselves," she said. "This isn't a dump." I clenched my jaw. "Why are there things outside?" She shrugged. "Maybe they were in my way, or maybe they just looked like they belonged there." My mother stepped into the doorway behind her. Her eyes landed on the mess, then on me. "Is this how you raise them? No respect for other people's space?" I looked down at the soaked toys, then back at her. "They're children." "Exactly," she snapped, "which is why they need better guidance." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab those toys and hurl them back through the front door, but instead I bent down and picked them up one by one, hands trembling, heart pounding. It wasn't until an hour later that the real breaking point came. A knock at the door. I opened it to see Mrs. Langford, our elderly neighbour, holding a thick folder wrapped in a plastic bag. "This was in the trash," she said softly. "It had your name on it. I thought maybe it was a mistake." I opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were the scholarship forms I'd filled out for Mason months ago. Application essays, recommendation letters, documents I had painstakingly assembled late at night while the boys slept. Everything torn, crumpled, defaced in blue pen, I stared at the jagged lines across Mason's name. My mother had thrown them out. The scream that left my throat startled even me. It wasn't words, it was raw, guttural, years of being silenced, bursting free. I grabbed the boys, didn't even pack. I wrapped them in jackets and carried them out into the rain. Ashley stood on the stairs, phone in hand, probably filming. "You're being dramatic," my mother called behind me. I didn't look back. We had nowhere to go. No plan, just water pouring from the sky and my heart beating loud in my ears. The boys were shivering by the time we reached the bus stop, all the shelters full or closed. I sat on the bench with Eli on my lap, Mason pressed against my side, trying to pretend this was another camping adventure. I wanted to cry, but they needed strength. I needed strength. A black car pulled up beside us. I flinched, then a familiar voice called out from the window. "Emily!" I turned. It was Daniel. We'd gone to high school together. We weren't close, but I remembered him as the quiet one in debate club, the one with kind eyes and a quick brain. "I saw you," he said. "You looked lost. Do you need a place to stay?" I hesitated. Pride and shame wrestled inside me, but my sons were cold. "Yes," I whispered. "He brought us to his townhouse, modest, warm, dry. He had a guest room, spare clothes, even hot cocoa. I didn't ask why. I didn't have to." That night, for the first time in weeks, we slept in beds. But the storm wasn't over. A week later, I was called into HR at the hotel where I worked. My supervisor said my recent absences and emotional instability had become a liability. They let me go. My savings had already run thin. Now, with rent and groceries looming, I took the only job I could find, waitressing at a diner 2 towns over. Tips were bad, hours were worse. But I kept going. And then, out of desperation, or maybe madness, I started writing. I created an anonymous blog, The Spare Daughter. I poured my story onto the screen, the favoritism, the gaslighting, the eviction. I didn't name names, I didn't need to. Women found it, they commented, they shared, they cried with me. Some said, "This is my story too." For the first time, I didn't feel alone, but the darkness still came. One night, after a particularly brutal double shift, I sat on the bathroom floor with a bottle of sleeping pills in one hand and a picture of my sons in the other. I was so tired, so empty. Then the door creaked. "Mama?" Eli stood there, clutching his blanket. He climbed into my lap and buried his face into my chest. "You don't have to go," he whispered. "I don't need a big house. I just need you." I dropped the pills, held him, promised silently I would never let them break me again. Later that night, I checked the blog. There was a new comment, anonymous. "I know your mother," it read, "and I know what she's hiding." There was no single moment of awakening. No blinding flash, no epiphany, just a slow, deliberate unfolding. Like fog lifting from a coastline you've lived beside your whole life but never truly seen. And what I saw in the rear view of my own history, it shattered something deeper than bones. It shattered trust. I began collecting memories like evidence, not the happy ones, the buried ones. The silences after I cried as a little girl and was told, "You're too sensitive." The way my sister always got the last piece of cake, the best Christmas gift, the room with a window. The way my father would hesitate before hugging me, glancing at my mother as if asking for permission. I remembered the first time I brought home a trophy in high school. 3rd place, but I was proud. My mother had looked at it and said, "Ashley got first last year, remember?" And I remembered how I never brought another trophy home again. It wasn't just unfairness, it was a pattern, a system. I'd been trained to diminish myself, to survive. But now I had children who were watching me, who were learning how to accept the world based on what I accepted. And I would be damned if I let them inherit my silence. I began digging. Late nights while the boys slept, I went back to that tin box. I scoured public records, courthouse filings, anything I could access. It was Daniel, my quiet, steady, surprisingly brilliant old classmate, who pointed me toward the right direction. She didn't just cross your name off the deed, he said after looking through the documents. She filed a quitclaim transfer and forged your father's signature. My breath caught. She what? She stole your inheritance, Emily. Legally, knowingly. The anger didn't come with heat. It came with clarity. Sharp, cold, weaponized. This wasn't just about kicking you out, Daniel continued. It was about control. It always was. He wasn't helping me out of pity or love. He'd been hurt by her too. Years ago, he'd been engaged to Ashley's aunt. My mother had killed the relationship. He's just a paralegal's kid, she'd said. That family will never measure up. So this was personal, but for both of us, it was also something more, justice. I want to file, I said. Not just to get back what's mine. I want everything documented, exposed. He nodded. We'll do it right, quietly, then loudly. Step 1, I filed a lawsuit, property fraud, forgery, unlawful eviction. Step 2, I began posting scanned documents, redacted names, of course, on my blog. I called it A Family Built on Paper Lies. The posts spread faster than I could track. Women messaged me in droves. This happened to me too. I thought I was alone. Step 3, I told my sons the truth. Not all of it, but enough. That sometimes even the people we love make choices that hurt us. That it's okay to be angry, and that it's okay to fight back with words, with truth, with boundaries. Then something happened I didn't expect. Mason, my quiet one, wrote a letter to the court. I didn't ask him to. I found it in his backpack. It read, Dear Judge, I don't know all the rules, but I don't want my grandma and grandpa to hate my mum anymore. She's trying really hard and she never yells. I love her and I want her to feel like she matters. Because she does. Please don't let them take our house. Love, Mason. I wept, then scanned it, then added it to the case file. It was the purest form of testimony. The blog kept growing. Comments poured in. People shared their stories, their pain. Some wrote poetry. Others sent me photos of family heirlooms they'd been denied. One woman even mailed me a necklace. Her grandmother left her in secret, saying, I want you to have this. You're doing what I couldn't. And then came the email, subject line, interview request from the Phoenix Chronicle. The journalist wrote, I've been following your story. I've lived a similar one. I'd like to talk. I think there are more of us than you know. I think people need to hear your voice, not just read it. She signed it. Another Emily. Something in me shifted again, not back into who I was, but into something sharper, clearer. Daniel asked me if I was ready. I looked around the small apartment, at my boys colouring on the floor, at the sticky note on the fridge that read, You matter too, Mum. I'm not ready, I said, but I'm going anyway. Because sometimes readiness isn't a condition. It's a choice. The courtroom was cold, not from the air conditioning, but from the silence. My mother sat 2 rows ahead, flanked by her attorney and my sister, both stone-faced. She wore her best pearls, her stiffest posture, as if the truth might bow to her authority. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I took the stand. My palms were dry, my voice steady. I'm not here to destroy my family, I said. I'm here because they already destroyed me. There was a pause. A breath held by every throat in that room. I was taught to stay quiet, to not make waves. That gratitude should come before dignity. That love meant submission. I believed it for years, until my children started believing it too. That's when I stopped. I unfolded a piece of paper. "This isn't revenge," I said. "This is clarity. I forgive you, but I will not forget." Silence again. The court ruled in our favour: fraud, forgery, unlawful eviction, emotional abuse. The deed was reinstated in my name. The will my mother had written, the one that conveniently left me out, was dismissed after a handwriting expert confirmed the signature had been faked. Then the real firestorm began. Daniel uploaded the ruling online. The blog posted every scanned document, every timeline, every redacted name that no longer needed to be redacted. The story went viral. Articles popped up across parenting forums, women's networks, even national news. The daughter who fought back when blood turns to ink. Emily versus the family legacy. My mother's pristine image crumbled. Old friends distanced themselves. The community she once ruled with passive-aggressive charm began to whisper behind closed doors. At church, her name became a prayer request for humility. And Ashley? Her university re-examined her residency status. After the blog exposed that she falsely claimed independent living to boost her financial aid eligibility. Her scholarship was revoked, classes cancelled, future rewritten. The house of cards collapsed in slow, painful silence. Behind closed doors, the family turned on itself. My sister accused my mother of manipulating her into signing documents she never read. My aunt claimed my mother bullied her into silence over years of misconduct. Cousins chose sides. Holiday dinners were cancelled. No one called each other anymore. Then came the final blow. Daniel found a second will, hidden, undated, drafted within the last year. In it, my mother left the entire estate to Ashley. Again. But this time, she had forged both my father's and sister's signatures. We submitted it to the court. Another hearing, another ruling. Her intentions were clear: control at all costs. And she lost everything. I didn't celebrate. Instead, I stood on the porch of the house that should have always been mine and stared at its weathered facade. The shutters were chipped, the garden overgrown, the echoes of trauma still lived in the floorboards. But it was mine again. And it wouldn't be wasted. I used the small settlement from the lawsuit to restore it, modestly, gently. No marble countertops, no grand redesigns, just warmth, safety, a place where silence didn't mean suppression. I opened it to women like me, mothers escaping manipulation, women with nowhere else to go. Each room now had a lock and a name. Each tenant received meals, therapy resources, and, most of all, listening ears. I didn't call it a shelter. I called it the second first home. There was only one room I didn't change, my mother's. I left it almost untouched, except for one detail: the family portrait above the bed. I carefully cut out the portion with my face and left the empty frame hanging there, not out of bitterness, out of truth. It was never my place. One evening, while I was folding laundry in the main hallway, there was a knock at the front door. I opened it to see an elderly woman, neatly dressed, soft-spoken eyes, and a small suitcase in her hand. "Are you Emily?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She hesitated, then looked around the hallway, as if soaking in the walls. "I'm not here for a room," she said. "I just wanted to see it for myself. You see, I was once married to your grandfather." She smiled gently. "I'm your mother's stepmother." The stage lights were blinding, but the silence in the room was full of breath. 1,000 eyes waited. I adjusted the mic, looked down at the note cards I didn't need, and began. "My name is Emily. I am the daughter of a narcissist. I am also a mother, a survivor, a believer in something bigger than blood. I told them the story, not for pity, not even for applause, but for recognition, for every woman in that room who had swallowed guilt like it was medicine, who had mistaken manipulation for love, who had been told they were too much, too loud, too emotional, or not enough. The applause at the end felt distant, like wind against a window. What mattered were the messages that came afterward, emails, letters, stories. You gave me language for what I've lived. My daughter finally believes me. I'm leaving tonight. You gave me courage. My TED Talk, Healing from Narcissistic Families, reached over 1 million views in a month. The shelter, the Second First Home, received a flood of applications and donations. I hired staff, built partnerships with trauma therapists, and started a mentorship program for mothers rebuilding from the ground up. And then one evening my sister called. She was quiet at first. The kind of silence that isn't waiting for permission to speak, just permission to feel. I'm sorry, she said. I waited. I should have stood up. I should have seen it. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I forgave you a long time ago, I said, but I no longer need a relationship built on apologies. She cried. I didn't. Some endings don't need reunions. Some peace comes from distance. Mason and Eli grew tall. Taller than I ever imagined. Mason joined the debate team, the same one Daniel once captained. Eli loved painting, especially rainy skies and bright stars. They didn't just heal, they thrived. They never asked why things happened the way they did. They only asked what we would do next, and I told them we would choose our lives, not inherit them. Then came the final truth, the final unravelling. The older woman, my mother's stepmother, returned. She sat with me one afternoon in the shelter kitchen, sipping tea, eyes soft with something deeper than regret. I need to tell you something, she said. It's not easy. I waited. Your mother was never pregnant. I froze. I helped her forge the papers. Your birth certificate. It was complicated and I didn't understand it all at the time. She claimed you were adopted from a distant cousin who couldn't raise you, but she never told your father. I didn't speak. She raised you to fill a role she couldn't control in her real daughter. That's why she hated you for needing her. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I only whispered, I always felt it. She placed a hand on mine. You deserved better, and you gave better. For a moment, I imagined going to find the woman who birthed me. I imagined long-lost family, letters, shared features in a mirror. But the moment passed. I didn't need more origin stories. I already had one I wrote myself. Weeks later, I packed up the house. I handed the shelter keys to a new director, someone who had once stayed there during a brutal winter with 2 daughters and a suitcase. I thanked Daniel, who had never asked for anything and gave everything. Then I moved to a small town. Fresh snow, blank pages, no neighbours who knew my past, just me, Mason and Eli. 3 sparks against the cold. Our new house wasn't big, but it had 3 beds, thick blankets, and a fireplace that crackled like laughter. We built snowmen, burned bad memories, made up new traditions. One night, as we baked cookies, someone knocked at the door. A young woman stood there, soaked from the storm, holding a torn backpack. I heard about what you used to do, she said. I have nowhere else. I looked at Mason, who nodded. Eli was already pulling out a spare blanket. I smiled. "We have a room," I said, "and we don't discriminate here.